Have you ever witnessed a moment so surreal that the entire world seemed to pause in disbelief? Picture a dazzling royal parade marching outside Buckingham Palace, tourists on tiptoe, snapping photos, and regal horses clopping in unison to a rhythmic beat. Yet amid the trumpets and pageantry, all came to an abrupt, astonishing halt, because of one small gesture delivered by a brave black little girl who shouldn't have even been there that day. Why did a single signal from this child bring centuries of tradition screeching to a standstill? Prepare yourself for a story, packed with secrets, high stakes, and the unbelievable power of destiny. A brilliant summer sun rose over London, illuminating the winding streets and the majestic spires of Westminster Abbey. The day felt electric, as though centuries of history were about to culminate in a single glorious spectacle. People flocked to the heart of the city, excitedly anticipating the famous Trooping the Colour, the annual celebration of the monarch's official birthday. Revelers, both local and international, had gathered around Buckingham Palace's ornate gates, their eyes bright with curiosity. Near the front of this eager crowd stood an unlikely pairing. A petite black girl named Nyah, no older than 10, and her mother, Amara. They had arrived from Manchester the day before, intending to show Nyah the grandeur of the ceremony. Amara believed witnessing the pomp and pageantry would be an excellent way for her daughter to learn about British culture. But Nyah had a different reason for coming. She longed to see the royal guards up close. There was a mystique about the guards in their tall bearskin hats, standing resolute no matter the weather or the crowd's antics. Nyah clutched a small plastic camera, eager to capture every moment. Whenever she felt anxious or overwhelmed, she pretended she was a photographer, focusing on the details around her. The rustle of bright dresses, the hush of excitement before the drums started, and the shimmering reflection of sunlight on the golden carriage were all wonders to her. Yet something about this day felt different, as though she was on the cusp of an extraordinary discovery. From a young age, Nyah had an uncanny fascination with codes and signals. While other children spent their free time playing games or reading fairy tales, Nyah would watch documentaries about World War code breakers or study sign language. She found joy in the mysterious artistry of communication that transcended ordinary speech. Nyah's mother indulged this unusual hobby, hoping it would blossom into a passion, maybe even a career in cryptography or intelligence. Only a week before their trip to London, Nyah had stumbled upon a faded journal in her grandmother's attic. Within its pages lay a series of strange hand signals and cryptic notes that mentioned Buckingham Palace and something called the Guards' Summons. Nyah's grandmother wouldn't speak much about it, only hinting that it had belonged to a great-great-uncle who had served in the British Army during a tumultuous time. Intrigued, Nyah devoted hours to deciphering the cryptic text, only partially succeeding. One gesture in particular, an intricate arrangement of the fingers, stood out. It was described as a summon of ties, a signal so secretive it could allegedly stop a regiment in its tracks. The day of the parade, Nyah had that journal stuffed in her backpack, its tattered edges a testament to its age and mystery. She was determined to test whether the summon of ties was just law, or if it held genuine power, though she could never have guessed the far-reaching consequences of her curiosity. As the clock struck mid-morning, the Trooping the Colour ceremony commenced in all its regal splendor. Tall, disciplined guards marched in perfect formation, their scarlet tunics shimmering under the sun. Horses pranced with controlled majesty tails, brushing the pavement in time with the regiment's drumbeat. From her vantage point near the front gate, Nyah felt her heart pound in sync with the drum's thunderous echo. Tourists craned their necks to catch glimpses of the household regiments. Cameras clicked incessantly. Meanwhile, a hush of awe fell across the crowd whenever the grand carriage passed, carrying esteemed members of the royal family. Nyah gripped her mother's hand, vibrating with excitement. She had never been so close to such a large, coordinated display of tradition. Standing guard beside the palace entrance was a member of the Grenadier Guards. His crimson coat fit him perfectly. Tall bearskin hat perched on his head. He appeared stoic and unmovable, exuding an aura of unwavering discipline. Nyah couldn't help but stare. Something about him reminded her of the stories from her grandmother's journal stories of hidden signals exchanged between soldiers long ago. Music from a large brass band played a rousing medley, culminating in a stirring rendition of Rule Britannia. The tension and drama soared as the entire parade marched forward with sweeping grandeur. Then came the moment Nyah had been anticipating, a pause in the music, just long enough for her to try the signal. She hesitated, nerves turning her stomach into a fluttering nest of butterflies. Did she dare? Nyah glanced at her mother, who was too enthralled by the ceremony to notice her daughter's trembling hands. Summoning her courage, the little girl lifted her left hand. She curled her ring finger inwards, raised her thumb at a slight angle, and extended her index finger in a short, steady motion, precisely as the summon of ties had been described in the journal. The gesture was quick, no more than a subtle flicker in the air. If she blinked, she might have missed it herself. Yet in the next moment, everything changed. The Grenadier Guard, who stood mere steps away, suddenly stumbled in mid-march. It was as if an invisible force tugged at his attention. His disciplined composure cracked. He turned his head slightly to meet Nyah's eyes. Even amid the roaring crowd, he looked directly at her confusion, and a hint of alarm etched on his otherwise impassive face. A wave of panic hit Nyah. She hadn't truly believed the signal would work. It was just a children's fantasy, a piece of archaic code. But now it seemed to have some extraordinary effect. The guard took 2 steps forward, breaking rank in a wave of chaos that disrupted the entire ceremonial procession. Horns blared off-key as the regimental band tried to maintain formation. The carefully orchestrated movements of the guards faltered. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the throngs of onlookers. Amara, sensing the disruption, turned to Nyah. She saw her daughter's hand suspended mid-gesture and watched as the guard, in a breach of unwavering tradition, locked eyes with the child. Shock made her momentarily speechless. This was not some casual wave for a friendly photograph. This was a deliberate signal, one that sent the guard into a near state of alarm. The guard immediately barked an order to the men around him. Within seconds, the entire regiment ground to a halt. The sudden cessation of marching feet on pavement echoed ominously across the wide avenue. Horses, uncertain and spooked, skittered nervously. An officer rushed forward, demanding to know the cause of this unprecedented interruption. Breathless Nyah could only stare at the scene, unfolding around her heart, pounding so loudly she wondered if the entire parade could hear it. Camera shutters clicked with renewed frenzy, capturing the bizarre moment. Onlookers turned to one another, questions forming in the hush. What just happened? Did that guard break formation? Why did the parade stop? Officials scrambled to regain order, shouting commands to line the men back up. Yet the guard, who had broken ranks, insisted on explaining. He pointed toward Nyah in the crowd, his voice shaken with something akin to fear, or perhaps reverence. On the dais, an official herald from the royal household demanded an answer. The hush turned oppressive. In the sea of red uniforms and gleaming brass, all attention converged on the small figure of Nyah, who wished more than anything to vanish in that instant. Her mother gripped her shoulder protectively. The tension felt like a coiled spring moments from snapping. Then a commanding voice boomed from the front, Lieutenant Armitage. "You will explain yourself immediately." The voice belonged to Colonel Brighton, a high-ranking officer with decades of service. He was responsible for ensuring the day's pageantry proceeded without a hitch. His stern countenance suggested there would be severe consequences for this interruption. Lieutenant Armitage, the guard who had responded to the signal, took a deep breath. His face paled beneath the rim of his bearskin hat as he faced Colonel Brighton. "Sir, I observed a gesture, one that I believed to be the summon of ties." An immediate ripple of shock passed through a few older guardsmen. They exchanged startled glances as if hearing a phantom from a long-forgotten legend. Colonel Brighton's glare intensified, and he turned his attention toward Nyah, who stood quivering beside her mother. "What do you mean, Lieutenant?" "That girl is merely a child in the crowd." Though outwardly dismissive, the colonel's tone carried a flicker of uncertainty. Lieutenant Armitage squared his shoulders. "Sir, the summon of ties is documented in certain classified texts related to extremely old regimental protocols. If I'd seen it incorrectly, I wouldn't have moved. But I recognized it instantly." Nyah's head spun. She had never imagined that the code in her grandmother's journal would have such real, immediate significance. She tried to recall the exact passages in the journal, but fear overwhelmed her. This was bigger than she'd anticipated. Far bigger. The hush was so profound that the faint clip-clop of horses in the distance echoed like thunder. Colonel Brighton marched toward the edge of the parade route, flanked by 2 guards. He stood an imposing figure, his chest full of medals and his gaze like a hawk. Amara pulled Nyah behind her, but the colonel locked eyes with both. "Child," he said, his voice cold but not unkind. "Who showed you that signal?" Nyah swallowed hard, her words sticking in her throat. She retrieved the small journal from her backpack with trembling fingers. Holding it out for the colonel to see, she replied in a shaky voice, "I found it in my grandmother's attic. My great-great-uncle was a soldier. I just wanted to see if it was real. I didn't mean to stop the parade." The official stirred from his dais, exchanging urgent whispers with other high-ranking individuals. Word of this disruption spread like wildfire among the ranks. Some recognized references to the summon of ties, an archaic signal rumored to override standard protocol in times of extreme danger or infiltration. Legends claimed it was used by covert operatives in the days of old occasionally to reveal critical messages to commanding officers during dire moments in British history. Meanwhile, a cluster of onlookers took a more cynical view. "This is madness," someone scoffed. "A child's game can't disrupt such a grand ceremony." But the expressions on the older guardsmen's faces suggested otherwise. Colonel Brighton gingerly flipped through the journal. His frown deepened with each yellowed page he examined. Then, handing the journal to Lieutenant Armitage, he said, "Take them inside. We need answers." Within minutes, the entire dynamic of the day changed. The parade, now halted, was instructed to stand down while the official ceremony would attempt to continue on the parade grounds minus the guards who formed the escort around the palace gates. A swirl of confusion, annoyance, and curiosity filled the crowd. Journalists and tourists alike scrambled to keep track of events. Amara clutched her daughter's hand as they were led toward an entrance behind the grand palace gates. Fear gnawed at her. Nyah, had always been an inquisitive, bright child, but this was unprecedented. The mother cast worried glances around, her mind spinning. Had they broken a law? Would Nyah face punishment for an innocent gesture? She could only hope for clarity once they were inside. A labyrinth of corridors lay behind the public-facing grandeur of Buckingham Palace. Paintings of royals from generations past lined the walls, their eyes seeming to watch Nyah's every step. Guided by Lieutenant Armitage and 2 other guards, Nyah and Amara found themselves in a small antechamber with high ceilings and a singular tall window looking out onto a neatly manicured palace courtyard. They were asked to sit at a round table. Colonel Brighton entered shortly afterward, accompanied by a stern-looking woman dressed in a civilian suit. Her name was Moira Caldwell, a special advisor to the royal household. She had short, clipped hair and the air of someone who could read you like an open book. If the colonel looked like a hawk, then Moira Caldwell was a falcon, swift and incisive. Moira's gaze landed on Nyah. "You're the child who used the summon of ties?" Nyah nodded, clasping her mother's hand. "Yes." Moira's eyes flickered with something unreadable. Respect mixed with consternation. She turned to Colonel Brighton. "I need to verify authenticity. I've read about this so-called summon, but it was always considered obsolete, possibly even a myth." Colonel Brighton opened the journal on the table. Lieutenant Armitage leaned in, pointing to the same passage that had caught Nyah's attention, the coded description of the gesture. His voice reverberated in the quiet room. "It matches exactly, ma'am, and she performed it accurately enough for me to recognize it instantly." Moira Caldwell studied Nyah for a moment. "You're not in trouble," she said gently, "but we need to understand how you came by this knowledge." The summon of ties was meant to be used in emergencies, usually to alert commanding officers to infiltration or sabotage. It overrides standard orders and can command an entire regiment to halt and listen. Amara spoke up, her voice still shaking. She found it in her grandmother's attic. It's a family heirloom, apparently. Moira turned her attention to Amara. "Do you have any idea if your ancestor was involved in classified operations?" Amara shook her head. "I only know my grandmother always spoke proudly of him. He was a war hero, but the details were scarce. No one ever told us about any kind of secret codes. We never imagined something like this could be real." Colonel Brighton cleared his throat. "Under normal circumstances, performing such a gesture without clearance would be considered a grave matter. But this child clearly acted out of curiosity, with no malicious intent." Moira sighed, pressing her fingertips together in thought. "There's a bigger issue here." The summon was recognized. The guard responded. Which means some of our current personnel are still being trained, or at least briefed on signals that are supposedly obsolete. Why was this knowledge passed on? And more importantly, what does it mean for security, if a random child can invoke it? The gravity of her words sank in. Nyah looked down at her shoes, dread filling her chest. She wanted to hide, to run away from the trouble she had caused. But there was no turning back. The summon of ties was no fairy tale code. She had just proven its authenticity for all to see. As the interrogation progressed, the grand parade outside attempted to resume, albeit in a subdued form. Tens of thousands of onlookers remained baffled about why a portion of the guards had abruptly halted. Cameras continued rolling, capturing every possible angle. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some said a child had shouted an insult, others claimed a health emergency among the ranks, while more imaginative gossip pinned it on an assassination attempt foiled by an eagle-eyed guard. The truth known to only a few was far stranger. In the antechamber, the tension grew more palpable. Moira Caldwell began pacing. "We need to confirm if there's a risk to national security. Perhaps the summon was triggered for a legitimate reason that no one is admitting." Amara's eyes widened. "We have no hidden agenda. My daughter is only 10. Moira paused her pacing. "Yes, but if certain unsavory figures discover that such a signal still holds power, they might exploit it. What if this wasn't simply an accident? We must consider every possibility." A new voice rang out from the doorway. It belonged to an older gentleman in civilian attire, accompanied by a young assistant carrying a tablet. Everyone snapped to attention. This was Sir Reginald Hawthorne, an advisor to the monarchy with a storied history in the intelligence community. His presence alone commanded respect. "Let's all calm down," Sir Reginald said, entering the room. His eyes flicked over Nyah and her mother with calculated warmth. "Colonel Moira, take a breath. This child has stumbled upon something we believed was lost to time." He took a seat, steepling his fingers. "Lieutenant Armitage, you did as you were trained, correct? You halted the regiment upon seeing the summon. That's standard protocol in the extremely rare event it is displayed." The lieutenant nodded. "Yes, sir." Turning his gaze to Nyah. Sir Reginald's voice softened. "My dear, you've put us in quite a predicament. Could you please tell me more about this journal?" Nyah reached for the small, tattered book. She flipped to the earliest pages revealing dates and cryptic sketches, possibly from World War II or earlier. Sir Reginald adjusted his reading glasses and studied them intently. He exhaled as if encountering a long-lost friend. "This code traces back to an operation known as Midnight Crown. It was never made public. The summon of ties was used to convey critical messages that bypassed all typical command channels. Only a select few were ever instructed in its usage." Moira Caldwell looked as if a puzzle piece had just clicked into place. Operation Midnight Crown was rumored to be a covert measure initiated during the Blitz. Intelligence suspected infiltration at high levels. The summon was a last resort measure to warn of infiltration without tipping off compromised officers. Sir Reginald nodded grimly. "Indeed. This was considered so sensitive that after the war, references to it were systematically destroyed, or so we thought. Looks like this family journal survived. Perhaps the soldier who wrote it had personal reasons for preserving it." Nyah stared at the pages, feeling the weight of history bearing down on her small shoulders. She had expected a cool moment of seeing the guard respond to a code. She never expected to unravel hidden chapters in the annals of British intelligence. Sir Reginald turned to Colonel Brighton. "I suggest we make a formal record of this journal and ensure it's secured. We also need to decide how to handle the child and her mother. It's not every day a piece of lost intelligence surfaces." Colonel Brighton nodded in agreement. "We can't very well arrest them. The child acted without malice. But we do need to ensure this knowledge doesn't spread. The summon is obviously still part of some undisclosed training module. If word gets out that a single gesture can halt a Royal Guard regiment, we might face national embarrassment, or worse, real security threats." Moira tapped her foot nervously. "We have to consider the public relations angle too. Right now, the outside world is in a state of confusion about why the parade stopped. We need a cover story or an official statement." Amara's voice trembled. "We never wanted any trouble. We only came to watch the parade. We'll do whatever we must to make this right." Sir Reginald offered a thin smile. "Rest assured we're not blaming you. However, I do have a proposition. Would you allow us to keep the journal for a short period, just to authenticate it thoroughly?" We'd then return it to your family, but perhaps with certain pages redacted or sealed. As for Nyah, we'd like her to keep silent about this incident for now. It's a matter of national security." A wave of relief and guilt washed over Amara. She glanced at Nyah, who clutched the journal protectively. "Yes, of course we'll cooperate." Nyah bit her lip, sadness evident. She had grown attached to the journal, to the history of her ancestor. She nodded slowly, though. "All right." Sir Reginald took the journal, handling it with great care. He closed it gently and placed it in a protective folder carried by his assistant. Then turning to Colonel Brighton and Moira Caldwell, he said, "I'll accompany them to a secure location for further analysis. In the meantime, Colonel, you handle the press. We'll say the parade was paused due to an operational check. Keep it vague." With that, the tension in the room eased slightly, yet an undercurrent remained like a low hum of electricity. Nyah and her mother couldn't shake the feeling that they had stepped into a realm of secrets and shadows, one that wouldn't let them go so easily. Once official statements were released, claiming a minor safety concern had paused the ceremony, the attention of the public shifted back to the continuing festivities. However, a group of journalists with sharp instincts sensed there was more to the story. They began asking pointed questions and scrutinizing footage of the incident. One determined journalist named Harriet Baines from The Guardian pored over every second of captured video. She noticed the guard halting mid-step, pivoting toward the crowd. One frame even showed a blurry image of Nyah's small hand raised in a unique gesture. Harriet's curiosity soared. This was no run-of-the-mill disturbance. By late afternoon, Harriet had compiled her observations into a digital file. She discovered references online to archaic royal signals, but nothing conclusive. Intrigued, she sent an email to a trusted source in the military. Harriet's instincts told her a major scoop might be lurking beneath the palace's official line. Elsewhere, Nyah and Amara found themselves confined in a comfortable sitting room within a government annex just for procedural checks, as Sir Reginald had assured them. A tray of tea and biscuits lay untouched on the table between them. A framed portrait of the late Queen Elizabeth II watched from the far wall, lending an air of solemnity to the environment. Amara tried to reassure Nyah, but the child's anxiety was evident. "Mum, I'm sorry," she sniffled. "I didn't mean to cause so much trouble." Amara wrapped her daughter in a comforting embrace. "Hush, love. You didn't do anything wrong. You were just curious. None of us knew this would happen." Nyah wiped a tear. "They're not mad at us, are they?" Before Amara could answer, the door opened. Moira Caldwell stepped inside, a softer demeanor than before. "We're wrapping up the final checks. One of our historians has already confirmed certain details in the journal that align with Operation Midnight Crown. You'll be free to leave soon. But there's a condition. We need your utmost discretion." Amara and Nyah nodded. They had no desire to drag this bizarre event into a public spectacle. Moira handed them each a form outlining the Official Secrets Act, requiring them not to disclose the summon of ties or any details from the journal to anyone. Feeling overwhelmed but eager to return to normalcy, they signed. The day had turned into dusk by the time they were allowed to leave. Nyah and Amara stepped out of the annex, expecting a taxi to ferry them back to their hotel. Instead, they found a black SUV waiting engine, purring quietly. Lieutenant Armitage stood beside it, hat tucked under his arm, his face somber. "Miss Amara Nyah," he greeted them. "I've been tasked with escorting you to your lodgings." Amara hesitated, but she saw no reason to refuse. After all the day's events had proven that anything could happen in a swirl of secrets. They climbed into the SUV. Lieutenant Armitage drove them away from Buckingham Palace, navigating through the city's neon-lit streets. Nyah stared out the window, watching as iconic landmarks drifted by Trafalgar Square, the Houses of Parliament, with the majestic Big Ben, and over the Thames to the hustle and bustle near Waterloo Station. She felt as though she were returning from another world, one steeped in hidden codes and cryptic signals. After a few minutes of silence, Lieutenant Armitage spoke, his voice subdued. "Miss Nyah, you should know I've never seen that summon performed outside a training exercise. It's something we learn about, but most of us never imagine seeing it used in the real world." Nyah's cheeks flushed. "I'm sorry. I didn't know it was that important." He gave a small nod. "Important, yes. Dangerous in the wrong hands." He glanced in the rearview mirror. "Your ancestor must have been quite remarkable." Nyah perked up a bit. "What do you mean?" Armitage continued. Anyone who had access to Operation Midnight Crown's signals was a key figure, possibly someone with high-level clearance or unique expertise. That means your great-great-uncle played a significant role in protecting the nation's security during a very dark time. Pride mixed with sorrow in Nyah's chest. She wished her grandmother was still alive to tell her more. She opened her mouth to ask further questions, but the weight of the day stole her words. She settled back into her seat, letting the passing city lights lull her into a contemplative silence. They arrived at a modest hotel in Kensington. Night had fully fallen, and streetlights cast warm halos on the pavement. Armitage escorted them inside, ensuring they reached their room without issue. Before he left, he stopped at the door. "Ma'am, if you need anything, please call this number." He handed a small card to Amara. Then he turned to Nyah. "One more thing. The summon you used, forget it. For your sake. Sometimes knowledge brings burdens." Nyah stared at him with wide eyes, nodding her understanding. With that, Lieutenant Armitage turned on his heel and walked down the hallway, the echo of his boots fading into the distance. Exhausted Nyah and Amara collapsed onto their beds. Neither fell asleep easily, minds swirling with unanswered questions. When Nyah finally closed her eyes, she dreamt of labyrinthine passages beneath the palace filled with coded messages scrawled on ancient walls. In every corner, a guard stood watch, waiting for a secret signal. She awoke in the middle of the night, heart pounding with the sense that their ordeal was far from over. True to that foreboding dream, the next morning brought new complications. Harriet Baines's investigative streak had churned out a preliminary article online, riddled with speculation, "Royal Guard stops parade," after child signals them. What's the real story? The piece was short on facts but long on intrigue. It immediately garnered interest trending on social media as readers shared theories ranging from bizarre conspiracies to half-baked guesses. By midday, news cameras circled Buckingham Palace like hungry vultures. Palace spokespeople stuck to the official line about a routine safety check, but Harriet and others smelled blood. They scoured the city searching for witnesses who might have seen the child. A few tourists described seeing a young black girl making a gesture fueling the rumor mill that some secret code was at play. Nyah and Amara learned of these developments when they received a phone call from Moira Caldwell. Her tone was terse. "The press is on the hunt," she warned. "Keep a low profile until the story blows over." "Should we go home?" Amara asked anxiously. Moira hesitated. "That might be safest. We'll arrange transport if you wish, but be aware the moment you surface reporters might latch onto you. We can't offer an official explanation to protect you if you're identified." Amara covered the phone's mouthpiece, looking at Nyah. "We could leave London, but there's no guarantee we won't face questions back home." Nyah's eyes filled with tears. She had wanted to see the museums ride the London Eye and explore more of the city. Instead, they'd become fugitives from the media. Still, she nodded solemnly at her mother. Maybe leaving was for the best. Meanwhile, Harriet Baines was putting together a puzzle piece by piece. She tracked down a man who claimed to have snapped a photo of the child at the exact moment the guard turned his head. The picture showed Nyah's face, partially her mouth open in astonishment. Harriet pored over it for hours, trying to glean identifying details from the background. As for Colonel Brighton and Sir Reginald Hawthorne, they were busy. They met in a discreet office discussing the implications of the summon re-emerging in the public eye. "We have a leak," the colonel snarled. "No one outside the palace should have recognized that gesture, let alone taught it to new recruits." Sir Reginald rubbed his temples. "Let's not jump to conclusions. For all we know, it was passed down in some old training manual. The real question, is there anyone out there who wants to exploit it? Some group that might turn this fiasco into an opportunity." Colonel Brighton's silence was telling. The potential for subterfuge had expanded exponentially now that the summon's existence was out, and in the shadows perhaps old enemies lay in wait, eager to resurrect a relic from Britain's clandestine history for their own ends. 2 days later, Nyah and Amara still lingered in London, torn between returning home and their wish to salvage some positive memories from the trip. After all, the official line insisted the incident was resolved. Maybe the media frenzy would die down if they kept a low profile. On the final day of their hotel reservation, they ventured out early in the morning, hoping to avoid the crowds and see the Natural History Museum at least. Walking hand in hand through South Kensington's quiet streets, Nyah and Amara tried to reclaim the fun and wonder of a simple vacation. They managed to spend a delightful few hours marveling at dinosaur bones, sparkling gemstones, and interactive exhibits about the Earth's core. Yet in the museum's crowded foyer, Amara spotted a woman holding a camera, her eyes fixed on Nyah. Something about her gaze was too intense, her posture too predatory. Amara's heart raced. Could it be a reporter? She guided Nyah toward a side exit, but the woman pursued them, camera lens protruding from her bag. They ducked into a restroom, hearts pounding. Amara texted the number Lieutenant Armitage had given her, explaining they might be tailed. Within minutes, a disguised security officer arrived to escort them out of the museum. Sure enough, Harriet Baines was waiting in the corridor, determined to confirm her suspicion about the mysterious girl from the palace fiasco. Spotting them being led away by a broad-shouldered man in plain clothes, Harriet's eyes lit with recognition. She tried to approach microphone in hand, but the security officer blocked her path. "Ms. Baines," the officer said firmly, "please step back." She glared, frustration evident. "You can't hide forever. The public deserves to know the truth." The officer ignored her protestations and swiftly ushered Amara and Nyah out a side door into a waiting vehicle. Nyah's nerves were on edge, tears threatening to spill. This was not how she had imagined her trip. Amara wrapped a protective arm around her daughter, vowing silently that they would soon be far away from all this chaos. Tensions escalated when Moira Caldwell called with an alarming update. Intelligence had intercepted chatter suggesting a small but radical group known for anti-monarchist sentiments had become highly interested in the summon of ties. They believed it could be used to disrupt state ceremonies, sabotage security operations, and embarrass the monarchy on a global stage. That afternoon, Nyah and Amara were once again escorted to a secure location, this time a different government facility, hidden behind a mundane office block in Whitehall. Sir Reginald Hawthorne met them in a modest conference room, where he shared the troubling developments. A group calling themselves the People's Oath is rumored to be seeking any means to undermine royal authority, he explained. They've set up channels on the dark web, claiming they've discovered a secret code that can bring the royal guards to a halt. It's only a matter of time before they attempt to replicate your gesture. Amara clenched her fists, fury flaring in her chest. This is insane. How can they replicate the gesture if it's so secret the official summon is hidden in the layers of the code? But digital technology allows for speculation. They could reverse engineer the gesture from the parade footage. If they replicate it accurately in front of a guard who still recognizes it, they could cause chaos, Sir Reginald said, voice grim. Amara's mind spun. She wanted to protect Nyah from this madness. But how could she shield her child from an entire extremist group? Moira Caldwell, who had been quiet until then, added, "We need your cooperation to help us identify vulnerabilities. Perhaps you could walk us through exactly how the summon was written in the journal, so we can train the guards to disregard it." Nyah's eyes widened. But then no one will ever respond to it again. Wasn't it created to protect people if something really bad happened? Moira cast her an apologetic look. I'm afraid times have changed. If the code is compromised, we have no choice but to retire it definitively. Nyah inhaled sharply. She thought of her ancestor, the code he preserved, and the reason behind it. A pang of sadness resonated in her. It was as if she were closing a door on a piece of her family's history, a piece that had once saved lives in a war-torn country. But reason told her it was necessary. The last thing she wanted was to see the summon turned into a weapon by malicious people. Unbeknownst to them, Harriet Baines had not been idle. She had managed to glean partial details of the summon from reviewing freeze frames of Nyah's hand in the parade videos. Driven by her thirst for a sensational scoop, Harriet posted a half-baked "How to Perform the Mysterious Royal Guard" signal article on a fringe news site, believing she was unveiling the monarchy's well-guarded secret. The People's Oath latched onto Harriet's article almost instantly. Under the false impression they had the correct instructions, they publicly declared that they would disrupt a smaller upcoming guard ceremony at the Tower of London, humiliating the monarchy in front of tourists from around the world. But Harriet's instructions were not fully accurate. She had missed crucial nuances. The next day, a group of protesters affiliated with the People's Oath descended upon the Tower of London ceremony. Their ringleader stepped forward, raising his hand in a gesture they believed to be the summon of ties. Cameras rolled, capturing the moment. The royal guards at the tower, however, remained steadfast, unmoved by the incomplete gesture. Confusion spread among the protesters. The ringleader repeated the gesture more aggressively, yet the guards continued their stoic watch, ignoring his frantic movements. Frustrated, the group caused a disruptive spectacle, chanting and nearly inciting a riot. The police moved in, arresting several individuals for disorderly conduct. Journalists documented the humiliating failure. Harriet Baines, who had helped spread the erroneous instructions, found herself under fire for publishing unverified information that incited public disorder. Official condemnation rained down on her and her publication. The Guardian swiftly distanced itself from Harriet's freelance pieces. In a matter of hours, Harriet's journalistic reputation was in tatters, and the People's Oath saw their moment of would-be triumph crumble into farce. Hard karma had arrived swiftly, dealing a crushing blow to those who sought to manipulate a sacred code without understanding its true origins or complexities. Inside the secure government facilities, war room-like atmosphere tension still hung thick in the air, as Sir Reginald Hawthorne and Moira Caldwell received confirmation that the would-be saboteurs from the People's Oath had failed in their televised attempt. The misfired protest had fizzled into public embarrassment. Arrests had been made, the footage had gone viral, and Harriet Baines's reckless article had backfired spectacularly. Moira exhaled for the first time in hours. "Well," she muttered, lowering her tablet. "That's one crisis averted." Sir Reginald nodded solemnly. "They tried to mimic something sacred and failed, but the mere fact they tried proves we can no longer risk the summon of ties remaining viable." He turned toward a cluster of aides and issued the command without ceremony. "Effective immediately decommission all legacy protocols involving the summon. Update the guard manuals. Make it obsolete in every training archive and living memory." Nyah sat across the room beside her mother, watching the discussion unfold with a heavy heart. She had known this moment would come, but hearing the decision spoken aloud made it real. A family legacy once dormant but powerful was now being buried for good. As silence fell, Moira approached them, her expression softer than it had been in days. "Nyah," she said gently, crouching to the child's eye level. "You did the right thing by telling us everything. You honored the memory of someone who mattered, your ancestor." Nyah blinked quickly, swallowing the lump in her throat. "But it's gone now. The code. Everything he created." Moira gave a small, bittersweet smile. "True. But it served its purpose. It protected the country in its darkest days. And when it needed to resurface one last time, you were the one who carried it. That's not something anyone can erase." Sir Reginald stepped forward, holding a small envelope sealed with an official stamp. "This is for you," he said. Inside is a carefully written summary what we were able to declassify about Operation Midnight Crown and your great-great-uncle's contribution. It's not much, but it's something your family can keep, a way to honor his legacy privately. Nyah took the envelope with trembling hands, then looked to her mother. Amara's eyes were already misty with gratitude. "We can't thank you enough," Amara said. "We didn't mean to cause all of this, but we truly appreciate your kindness and fairness." Moira stood, offering a final nod. "We've arranged transport to take you back home. It's best to lay low for now. We'll have eyes on the press to make sure you're not harassed." Nyah's voice was quiet but firm. "Will people ever know what happened?" Sir Reginald hesitated, then replied, "Maybe one day, when the world is ready for the truth. But for now, the best stories are the ones kept safe by the people who lived them." Amara wrapped an arm around Nyah's shoulders. As they turned to leave the facility, Nyah looked over her shoulder one last time at the powerful figures who had once questioned and protected her in equal measure. They weren't enemies, they had simply been guardians of secrets too old and too dangerous to remain in the light. And as the heavy door closed behind her, Nyah understood something deeply. The summon of ties might never be used again, but its final act, saving the present from chaos, was just as noble as its origin. Her ancestors' work hadn't vanished. It had been fulfilled. The train from Euston Station hummed gently as it pulled out of London, weaving its way north toward Manchester. Inside one of the carriages, Nyah and Amara sat side by side, their bodies still tense with the weight of the week's chaos. Though the platform had vanished behind them, a lingering sense of disbelief clung to the air. What had begun as a simple family trip to the capital had unraveled into a confrontation with a long-buried national secret. Nyah stared out the window in silence, the English countryside rolling past like a series of dreamlike paintings. Hills, fields, and scattered cottages blurred into streaks of green and grey. She clutched the sealed envelope Sir Reginald had given her, her small hands barely covering its surface. It felt heavier than paper, heavier than the truth it carried. Inside were the declassified fragments of her great-great-uncle's role in Operation Midnight Crown, official confirmation that her family had helped protect an entire nation. Amara watched her daughter closely, noting the tension still present in Nyah's posture. She reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair behind her daughter's ear. "You've been very brave," she said softly. "I hope you know that." Nyah gave a faint nod, but her gaze never left the window. "I didn't mean for any of it to happen, Mum. I just wanted to see if the signal worked. I didn't think it would change everything." Amara sighed, her voice low and comforting. Sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest actions. What matters is that you faced everything with honesty, and you never ran from the truth, even when it was frightening. Nyah finally looked away from the window. "I feel like I ruined the parade, and now the summon is gone. It's like I erased something important." "No," Amara said firmly. "You revealed something important. You didn't ruin anything. You gave the world a chance to remember something that was buried before it could fall into the wrong hands." Nyah turned the envelope over in her lap. The official seal was embossed with the royal insignia, a silent reminder of how far her journey had reached. "He was a code developer," she whispered. "The paper said he designed untraceable signals. He helped stop infiltrators. And he passed his knowledge down through that journal," Amara said. "Even if he didn't mean to, he gave it to you. And you handled it with care. I think he'd be proud." A faint smile crossed Nyah's face, her first in hours. "Do you think the guards will still remember the summon?" Amara shrugged gently. "Maybe some will. But they'll be told not to respond anymore. The signal did what it was meant to do one last time, and now it's time for it to rest." The train rumbled across a wide viaduct, the skyline of a small town appearing in the distance. Nyah opened the envelope and slowly pulled out the summary. The language was formal, but the essence was clear. Her great-great-uncle had served with honor, helping to create signals that saved lives when traditional communication failed. His work had never been publicly acknowledged until now. Reading those words, Nyah felt a sense of closure. Her adventure hadn't just caused chaos, it had revived a forgotten chapter of heroism. It had proven that history lived on in the stories families carried, even in old journals tucked in attic corners. She leaned her head against her mother's shoulder. "I'm glad we came to London," she murmured. Amara kissed the top of her daughter's head. "So am I. And no matter what the world remembers, we'll never forget." As the train sped toward home, the skyline of Manchester, drawing nearer, Nyah knew she had changed. She was no longer just a curious girl with a fascination for codes. She was the guardian of a legacy, one that had briefly brought history roaring back to life. Life in Manchester resumed its routine rhythm for Nyah and Amara. Amid the swirl of everyday tasks, school work errands, the extraordinary events in London began to fade like a dream. Most people around them never suspected the monumental secret that Nyah had briefly carried in her small hand. Reporters eventually moved on to other headlines. Harriet Baines issued a public apology. though it did little to restore her tarnished reputation. The people's oath retreated into obscurity after their public humiliation. Buckingham Palace continued its traditional ceremonies, now with newly updated protocols, safeguarding against any future misuse of archaic signals. From time to time, Nyah caught a glimpse of the official trooping the color on television. She'd watch the guards march in precision, feeling a pang of nostalgia. Though she was just a child, she had touched a part of British history, if only for a moment. She smiled wistfully, remembering the hush that fell over the crowd when that guard recognized her signal. She remembered the swirl of hush and confusion, the swirl of centuries-old tradition clashing with a child's curiosity. She remembered the face of Lieutenant Armitage, the concern in his eyes, and how that single gesture formed a bridge between a man sworn to tradition and a little girl who yearned to understand hidden codes. The summon of ties, now laid to rest, had served its final function, reminding everyone that knowledge can be a powerful spark, capable of both illumination and ignition. In the end, Nyah discovered that history is alive all around us, hidden in attics, old journals, and half-remembered stories. And sometimes it only takes one small act to bring that history roaring back into the present, even if ultimately it must be put to rest once more. And so our story ends, where it began at the intersection of the past and the present, with a single brave child standing at the heart of a centuries-old secret. We've witnessed how one tiny hand gesture, a spark of curiosity, could halt an entire royal parade in its tracks, unraveling hidden codes and shadowy histories. Through twists of fate, dramatic showdowns, and the weight of an ancient protocol, Nyah and her mother have braved a whirlwind of challenges. Yet in the end, it's the unbreakable bond of family and the lessons of history that triumph. If you found yourself on the edge of your seat, yearning to see more untold stories and hidden secrets revealed, please like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue exploring the incredible power of the human spirit, one story at a time. Thank you for watching.